Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is February 7th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine has appointed Ihor Klymenko as Internal Affairs Minister. The relevant statement was made by Member of Parliament Yaroslav Zelensky on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. According to Zelensky, a total of 321 members of parliament voted in favor of Klymenko's appointment. A reminder that, after Ukrainian Internal Affairs Minister Denis Monastyrsky died in a helicopter crash in the Kyiv region's Brovary on January 18, 2023, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine appointed Klymenko as acting Internal Affairs Minister. On February 6, 2023, Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal submitted a motion to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to appoint Klymenko as Internal Affairs Minister. Ihor Klymenko has been working for the Ukrainian Internal Affairs Ministry for more than 20 years. Between September 25, 2019 and January 20, 2023, he served as head of the National Police of Ukraine. The servicemen of the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service have shot down Russia's Su-25 assault aircraft over the Donetsk region's Bakhmut. The relevant statement was made by the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service on Telegram, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. The enemy assault aircraft was giving cover from the air to the infantry attacking the defense line. One of Border Guard units opened fire with a man-portable air defense system and shot down Russia's combat aircraft, presumably Su-25. The plane was hit by a missile and caught fire. The pilot's fate is remaining unknown, the report states. Later, the Ukrainian State Border Guard Service posted a video showing the crash site. A reminder that, between February 24, 2022 and February 7, 2023, the Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed 294 Russian aircraft, 284 helicopters, and 1,958 unmanned aerial vehicles. Ukrainian Armed Forces recruits, as part of basic combined military training in the United Kingdom under the leadership of Australian instructors, are learning to provide first aid in combat conditions. According to Ukrinform, Oleksandr Pavlyuk, the Chief of Staff and Deputy Commander of the Ukrainian Ground Forces, said this in a post on the Telegram messaging app. The training is being conducted by instructors of the Operation Kudu of the 5th Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment of the 1st Brigade of the Army of the Australian Defence Force, the report reads. According to Pavlyuk, during the training, critical skills on the battlefield that are important to every soldier were practiced theoretically and practically, providing aid to an unconscious victim, help with difficult breathing, stopping life-threatening bleeding, help with fractures and dislocations, frostbite and heat stroke, ways of evacuating and moving the victim. The UK government launched basic combined military training for the Ukrainian Armed Forces in 2022. It is part of the UK's ongoing commitment of more than £2.3 billion in support to Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada has appointed Vasyl Maliuk as head of the Security Service of Ukraine. Prior to that, he served as acting head of the SBU. Oleksiy Honcharenko, a lawmaker from the European Solidarity Party, reported this on Telegram according to Ukrinform. General Vasyl Maliuk has been appointed head of the Security Service of Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada approved a respective motion from the President of Ukraine, the parliamentarian said. On July 17, 2022, President Volodymyr Zelensky dismissed Ivan Bakanov as head of the Security Service of Ukraine. The next day, the head of state appointed SBU's first deputy head Vasyl Maliuk as acting head of the agency. On July 19, the Verkhovna Rada voted to dismiss Bakanov. On February 6, 2023, the president submitted to the Verkhovna Rada a motion to appoint Maliuk as head of the Security Service of Ukraine. The Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence recommended that the parliament support such an appointment. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a decree on the provision of humanitarian aid to Turkey. According to Ukrinform, the decree to that effect, number 61/2023, has been published on the website of the head of state. The head of state ordered the provision of humanitarian aid to Turkey in order to help overcome the consequences of the emergency situation in the Republic of Turkey that was caused by an earthquake, in accordance with Article 10 of the Law of Ukraine on Humanitarian Aid. Under the decree, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine must ensure the provision of humanitarian aid to Turkey. In Novopskov, Luhansk region, the Russians started building a crematorium due to the impossibility of removing the corpses of their soldiers. According to Ukrinform, Luhansk Regional Governor Serhiy Haidai said this in a post on Telegram. Due to its defeat, the so-called Second Army Corps of the LPR People's Militia, we have information that the invaders started digging a pit near Novopskov. Of course, this is not for the construction of a hospital, school, or kindergarten. This is actually for the construction of a new crematorium. Because they simply don't have a place to put all these corpses, Haidai said. According to him, there is an interesting tactic of the Russian command. New units of freshly mobilized soldiers are isolated from each other, with regular troops or Kadyrov stopping any communication between the newly arrived soldiers. As a result of reconnaissance by combat, those constant attacks, they have a huge number of dead and wounded, and the commanders are trying to prevent panic among new fighters in this way, Haidai said. Russia keeps 2 warships on combat duty in the Black Sea and 10 in the Mediterranean Sea, including 5 of them armed with caliber cruise missiles. According to Ukrinform, the press service of the Ukrainian Navy said this in a post on Facebook. As of February 7, 2023, there were 2 enemy ships on combat duty in the Black Sea and 10 enemy ships in the Mediterranean Sea, including 5 of them armed with 72 caliber cruise missiles, the report said. On February 6, Russian troops kept 2 warships on combat duty in the Black and Azov Seas. None of them were armed with caliber missiles. Russia has been attempting to restart major offensive operations in Ukraine since early January 2023, but it remains unlikely that Russia can build up the forces needed to substantially affect the outcome of the war within the coming weeks. The UK Ministry of Defence said this in its latest intelligence update published on Twitter, Ukrinform reports. According to the update, Russia's operational goal is almost certainly to capture the remaining Ukrainian-held parts of the Donetsk region. British intelligence recalled that Russian forces have only managed to gain several hundred meters of territory per week. This is almost certainly because Russia now lacks the munitions and maneuver units required for successful offensives. Senior commanders likely make plans requiring undermanned, inexperienced units to achieve unrealistic objectives due to political and professional pressure. Russian leaders will likely continue to demand sweeping advances. It remains unlikely that Russia can build up the forces needed to substantially affect the outcome of the war within the coming weeks, the report said. Read also, Air Force of Ukraine launches 11 strikes on enemy positions. Russian forces shelled a settlement of Mykolaiv region's Ochakov community with MLRS, leaving a part of the settlement without electricity. The Mykolaiv Regional Military Administration said this in a Telegram post, Ukrinform reports. Mykolaiv District, on February 6, at 23:58, the enemy shelled a settlement in the Ochakov community with MLRS. As a result, a part of this settlement was left without electricity. Information on damage is being updated. There are no casualties, the report says. It is also noted that on the night of February 7, at midnight, enemy shelling of the Kornomorsk community damaged an infrastructure facility. There were no reports of casualties. Read also, 1 civilian killed in Russian shelling of Donetsk region in Mykolaiv city and the Pervomaisk, Voznesensk and Bashtanka districts. The day and night passed relatively calmly. As reported by Ukrinform on February 6, Russian troops launched artillery strikes on a settlement and the water area of the Ochakov community, Mykolaiv region. The Russian army killed 1 civilian in Donetsk region on February 6. Pavlo Kirilenko, head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration, said this in a Telegram post, Ukrinform reports. On February 6, it was established that Russians killed another resident of Donetsk region, in Bakhmut. 5 more people in the region were injured, he wrote. Read also, Russian troops shelled 3 communities in Sumy region on Monday. He noted that it is currently impossible to establish the exact number of victims in Mariupol and Volnovakha. As reported, on February 6, the enemy launched 6 missile attacks, 24 airstrikes, and 75 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems, in particular, on civilian objects in Kharkiv, Donetsk, Dnipropetrovsk and Kherson regions. There were casualties among the civilian population. Today we were talking about those news. DR appoints Ihor Klymenko as Internal Affairs Minister. Russia's Su-25 downed over Bakhmut. Ukrainian Armed Forces recruits learning to provide first aid. Ukraine's parliament appoints Maliuk as SBU head. Zelensky signs decree to provide humanitarian aid to Turkey. Russians start building crematorium in Luhansk region due to heavy losses. Haidai. Russia keeps 2 warships in Black Sea. Russia will unlikely build up forces for serious offensive in coming weeks. UK intelligence. Infrastructure facility damaged as Russian forces shell Mykolaiv region. 1 civilian killed in Russian shelling of Donetsk region.